Thank you, Yaba.
Now, you know, bios are an interesting thing. That's cute. It was written and proofread and such. If you had to introduce yourself, though, how would you introduce yourself? Off paper.
Wow. Well, first, thank you, Yaba, and thank you. I know I work at BlackStar, but thank you, BlackStar, for this opportunity. Yeah, I would say, I mean, a lot of that is accurate. I would call myself a queer person, a filmmaker, also a writer. I am Bangladeshi. I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Springfield, Illinois.
Okay.
But I was born in Winnipeg, Manitoba. So I also would say I'm from all over. But yeah, I am very interested in, you know, from bell hooks, like confronting all those things. So yeah, that's me.
You. That's you. Okay, so you do work for BlackStar, but you earned this place in this film festival, yes?
I hope so.
Okay, so the difference between us is your third, I thought it was your first, your third short film. So congratulations. Thank you. And as I watched the film, I saw it before y'all. As I watched the film, I wanted to know, like, I'm always interested in how creatives, like, where did the idea come from? How's your mind work?
Yeah, I mean, it really, originally it started with just like an image, which is the last scene in the film. But I also, so for folks who don't know, the difference between us is about an undocumented Bangladeshi immigrant looking for an apartment here in Philly who takes a sublet and starts to imagine who their roommate is. I lived in San Francisco once, and I had a situation where I met someone one time to interview for an apartment, and they said yes, and then I moved in, and I didn't see them for weeks. We had different schedules. They worked all night. They didn't really work, but they worked all night. And I worked.
Out.
Yeah.
You were in the streets.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And I was at work all day, and so I just started to like imagine who they were based on the food they left out and the stuff. They were a mess, you know. So I was like, and then I met them, and it didn't quite align with what I thought, and it wasn't romantic or anything. But I started to think, you know, how we do that when we are dating online, for instance. You like look at a profile, and you're like, let me project all my fantasies and dreams onto this person. But even if you met somebody once after one date, you do something like that. So that's where it originates. But yeah, over time it accumulated a lot of layers from my personal experience.
So building off of that, because Sophia, who's the main character, she's developing this relationship, like you said, with someone she's yet to meet. What were some of the creative choices you made? You know what's interesting, when I was watching, I was like, this is Philly, this looks actually pretty nice, right? I didn't even recognize the city, it looked good. So what were some of the creative choices you made in terms of, because a lot is left to the imagination, I think, for the viewer even. So like, what were some of the creative choices in terms of what you were hoping to communicate to your viewers?
Yeah, and shout out to Tashay Williams, who's the producer of the film.
Also BlackStar family.
And the director of photography, Noshin Dadaboy. So Noshin and Tashay had a big role in this as well, but a lot of what we were trying to convey as well is about my thinking around gender and race in terms of how, you know, when you take that next step of like, okay, I imagine what somebody looks like, or imagine what love looks like, you know, I'm always thinking about how that's impacted by the white supremacist patriarchal world that we live in. So that, you know, like what happens if you grew up watching films, hearing stories, reading stories where the protagonists don't look like you, don't have your experiences. I'm always curious, like, does that impact how you start to imagine love, like for yourself, like, but also for others? What does an ideal romantic partner look like, you know? So part of what we were trying to convey through some of the, you'll see in the film, like Sophia will imagine the hand of the person writing a note to her, who is her imagined roommate. Or you might hear a voice, and you'll hear multiple voices. And so there I was trying to explore also, gender and specifically, and how we might imagine, okay, if someone has this voice, then maybe they're this gender. Or if someone has this type of hand, am I, as an audience member, projecting a gender onto them? And so we tried to do some of that visually as well.
Yeah, in terms of like creating the person and the person in your mind. Now, again, you work for BlackStar full time. So how do you do that and create film?
I don't really. I mean,
What do you mean you don't?
This was a wild, very difficult project. First, it wouldn't have happened without the help of many people in this room, including Sydney, who was our script supervisor.
Look at me.
Katie was a production assistant. Niall was a production assistant. So, and Mayori. I didn't see you there. Mayori is an executive producer. So,
Okay, Mayori, executive producer.
So yeah, it doesn't happen without BlackStar community supporting me. But also, it was very challenging. Like, we made this during COVID, at the beginning or peak of COVID, and our lead actor is not the lead in the film because that person we had to replace 2 days before filming began because of COVID.
Oh, wow.
We lost, not lost in that sense, but our first assistant director also got COVID. We had to replace them the day before. So it was really hard. And then I was working, and so I don't know how we did it, but it happened, and a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of tears, but I'm so grateful for the opportunity. I'm so grateful that it came together with the help of so many amazing, talented people.
Were you, would you have identified, how long have you been with BlackStar?
Officially full-time, I think, since 2020.
Okay. Would you or did you identify as a creative or a filmmaker before you started working for BlackStar?
I did, but I was like casual. I mean, it's hard to make short films anyways, but sometimes you make a short film and then you put everything into it and then it doesn't quite, the thing doesn't happen for you. And so that, like 5 years before I started at BlackStar, I had made another short film.
Okay.
But at that point I was like, oh, I'm never going to do that again. It's so much work. But definitely, coming to the festival, even before I worked full time, being in this environment really inspired me and made me imagine it happening in Philadelphia, and knowing that there was a community that I could make the film with.
Yeah, that's what I was getting towards. I wanted to know if BlackStar inspired you in some way.
Always.
Yeah? Okay. Now that the film is done, you know that you're going to take it places and lots of people are going to see it and you're going to be in.
You're right.
We're thinking positive and we're projecting what it is we want into the universe. Wow. Yes?
Full circle.
Okay. So you're taking the film around. You're going to be in conversation. What types of questions do you want to be asked?
Oh, wow. I love that question.
Because people ask you questions you don't care nothing about. Like, what is it? What kind of seriously? What kinds of questions? What kinds of conversation do you want to be in? What do you hope? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What are you hoping? What kind of conversations are you hoping the Q&As and such will inspire?
I mean, I really want this film, and we wanted this film to reach Black and brown queer audiences, Bangladeshi queer audiences in Philadelphia and around the world. And I would love to explore some of the things that we tried to say about that, including around, there's a history of Black and brown solidarity between South Asian Americans and Black Americans that many South Asian communities specifically don't know about or have not been taught about. And so that's one thing I would love to talk more about in one of the contexts of the film. And then there's a story in the film about the Bangladeshi independence war and the women who went through so much to free Bangladesh. So it was a war fought over the right to speak a language and the right to speak Bangla. So I want to go into that, and that story is actually the story of my own grandmother. So yeah, I want to talk about all that and how, again, gender and race is all up in there, and those women in particular in Bangladesh.
So you said after the first film, you told yourself you weren't ever going to do it again, and you did it 2 more times.
Yeah, 2 more times.
2 more times, okay. So what more do you want to do after this?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely rejuvenated an interest in or desire to keep making work like this, but the story itself is not totally done in the short, you know. Okay. So, you know, there's a character I don't talk a lot about because I don't want to give away too much about them and their role in the film, but they have a whole other story too, you know, and I would love to tell their story. And
so, like a serious situation?
I mean, if anybody wants to give me money, yes. Yes, maybe.
Because it takes a lot of money to make these things. So, okay, the decision between short film and feature length, how's that work? How'd you make that decision?
Yeah, that was a tough one. I actually first wrote the film as a feature, and then I was in a workshop with a bunch of other screenwriters who were like, nah, you should make a short. So then I rewrote it, or condensed it into a short. And it was really hard because it wasn't imagined as just this moment in the film. So it took a long time. Like I said, or I may not have mentioned it, but I lived in San Francisco over 10 years ago. So that's when I first started writing it. And, you know, over that time I changed a lot too, but the script, you know, it took that long for it to come to a place where it felt like it could be a short. But also shout out to Rashid Zakat, who nominated me for, thank you, Rashid, because Rashid nominated me for an IPMF grant here in Philadelphia, and had I not got that grant, I probably would still be writing it, so, you know.
So when you say you changed in the process, how does your own identity impact the work that you do?
Yeah, you know, I was also a writer, or am a writer. I wrote primarily about gender and race in the media. When I first started writing, my focus was, and often I feel like I was maybe put in this focus, but it was about masculinities and like representations of masculinities. Through the writing process and a lot of reading and queer community, I, you know, came out as genderqueer myself and pansexual, and, you know, being Bangladeshi, raised Muslim, there was a lot of challenges with that, you know, telling that story, and so it started to change what I would do narratively, or because sometimes I couldn't tell that story in the way I wanted to through nonfiction. So I started to put it into this script, and that really transformed this story and all the stories I want to tell in the future. Okay.
I know y'all haven't seen the film, so I'm gonna open it up to questions. BlackStar family, y'all want to talk to your boy? You have any questions for your mans? No? No? Well, congratulations again and again.
Thank you, Yaba.
Yes, oh, I'm sorry. Do I have to give you the mic? You just kidding? Okay. You want the mic? Okay. We can't hear you. I'm sorry. Let me give you the mic.
Thank you. Hello. Hello, Imran, who I've never met before. You were just saying that you originally wrote this as, or conceived of it as a feature, and then you condensed it into a short. I would just love to hear you talk more about what that process was like for you. And I know that you said there were certain things that you wanted to, that you want to explore about other characters, but just, I'm curious how you honed in on this particular part of the story.
Great question. What was your name again, Sydney?
Marisol.
Yeah, I mentioned that the original idea for me all came from one shot, which Noshin captures really well in the film, but it was, again, I don't want to say too much about it, but it's a visual that I had in my head, and so it takes place on a bed, and there's a certain thing happening. So that visual is how I basically started to think, okay, if I can only make a short film, I want that to be in the short. What's the story that has to be told for that to make sense, for the emotion of that moment to come across? And I hope it works, but that was really the way that I started. And, it's still 25 minutes, so it's not that short. But, I think, it was challenging, but that's how we approached it.
No.
Hi. So,
hello.
What was the scene that didn't make it in that with the future perhaps you would include?
Excellent question.
Great question. I mean, yeah, because the second scene that I wrote is the very first scene of the feature, which is not in the short, which is when Sophia actually leaves where they're coming from. It's a big part of the story because it gives you some context for why, maybe, and also develops some of their relationship with her mother. Takes place at a bus stop, and she gets on a bus to go to Philadelphia from Springfield, Illinois, coincidence. But yeah, I would love to shoot that and someday tell that story. And then there's another character in the film who is named M, and then they have the next scene, and you start to see where M's coming from more clearly. So.
Is it a collaborative process when you make those decisions about like how the story is shaped and what you keep it? Like, is it a collaborative process with other producers, or is that something that you as the screenwriter take, you know what I mean? Individual.
Yeah. I mean, in this case, because I was writing it for so long by myself, a lot of those choices I made, but they were based on feedback, like in that workshop, or like when we did get to making the film, Noshin had a lot of vision for what could visually be possible or what would look good. And so we did make, Noshin helped me make those choices, and then Taché really helped to be like, we can't afford that, so don't do that.
Are you nervous?
Oh God, I don't know if you could tell, but I'm very nervous.
Not in this moment. But thank you for sharing. I mean, in terms of, we're here to support you, yes? We're all here in support.
Thank you.
We're all in support. But in terms of your film BlackStar is a big deal.
Yeah, I'm so honored. I was surprised to get in. It's where I wanted to show the film because I made it for this community and for the people in Philadelphia, but then that adds all this pressure of like, okay, now that's actually happening. And more than anybody in the world, really, I want my communities and my people to like the film, So this screening is the most important one that there could be, So yeah, I am nervous, but I'm excited too, and this has been such a long journey to get to this point, and I'm excited for the whole team. There's so many people to thank. And that I don't have time right now, but like we shot the film in Upper Darby for one scene. This grocery store, Greenhouse Grocery, let us shoot out there. We filmed most of the apartment in our friend Jean-Jacques' home. We built the apartment inside the home. Alexis Thompson built an apartment in there. And then we filmed another scene in South Philly. So it's very much, like you said, it's Philly, Yeah, so having it screen at BlackStar here with all those people in attendance I'm nervous.
Well, don't be, because your whole family's here to support. You have a question? Come on, I was about to wrap it up.
Hello. I've
Hello.
never met you before either. So I know that you had, you made an effort to make sure that you hired people in your crew who were also queer, Black and brown. And I know, just because I was there with you when you were doing the hiring process and everything like that, that was a difficulty that was worth exploring. And I just would like to hear you share more about that, and how that for the next project that you have, how you're going to even perfect that goal, because I know that that is also something that's really important to you in your future projects that you're going to have as well.
Thank you, stranger. Yeah, so our cast and crew was almost entirely people of color, mostly queer, and certainly led by queer folks. And it was challenging at times, like, casting, trying to find, I really wanted one character to be genderqueer, to be of a certain age, to have a certain appearance. And, we went to different casting agencies and people didn't help us. Shout out to In Search Of agency, Nafisa, who ended up being our casting director, and her and Tishay found the people, but that was hard. And then, so many men were recommended for like every role, and we did hire some men, but, like in making a film, so many of the technical positions, post-production, we'd ask for recommendations of people of color, and you'd get a lot of men. And so, working to try to make sure we could hire women and people of other genders, it took a long time, took a lot of work, but yeah, I definitely think it's worth it, and it's part of the story we wanted to tell, and who we wanted to make the movie for, as well as that, we can love each other. We don't, just to bring it back to the beginning, it's like, you can have love stories that don't include men, that don't include white people, that don't include some cis people, but not all cis people, and so that was also something we wanted to do behind the scenes as well, so that there was an authenticity to the story on screen.
And this is the reason why I asked you about being nervous. I forgot my pickup point. What's bringing you joy right now?
I can't believe this all happened. I've always wanted to be a filmmaker since I was little. I made 2 shorts, but never had an audience that's going to be like the one here. And I love the people at BlackStar. I love my family's going to come through, my friends. Shout out to Maori for building this whole, starting this whole community. And this is joy right here.
Yes, and shout out to BlackStar for all of its growth and development. We were just talking before coming on stage, remembering the first year, back when, and it being one day. Was it one day? It was still a weekend? It was 4 days?
Sorry. I need to get back to work, yeah.
Wait, are they making you work during the festival?
Yes.
You're a filmmaker.
Yes.
You should have off with pay.
Interesting, yeah.
They're proud of you.
Good point.
Okay, tell everybody when we can come out and support you and see the film.
Yeah, so The Difference Between Us has its world premiere on Saturday, August 5th at 8 p.m., part of the Interpersonal Shorts block. It's also online August 6th at 4 p.m. as part of the Interpersonal Shorts block. And you can get tickets at blackstarfest.org/festival.
Thank you so much, Imran, and congratulations
Thank you, Yaba.
again.